Good evening. My name is Gary Sanfason. I'm the project coordinator for the Northern Front Range Recreational Sports Shooting Management Partnership. I want to welcome everyone who's viewing the virtual meeting tonight, April 13th, 2015. I want to introduce and welcome the partners who will be participating in the virtual meeting tonight. Here's a list of their names, and then we'll get to the picture of them, but I want to make sure you know who's here. Glenn Casamassa is the Forest Supervisor for U.S. Forest Service. Steve Yamashita, Northeast Regional Manager, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Commissioner Gail Watson from Gilpin County. Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County. Commissioner Tom Hayden from Clear Creek County. And Commissioner Tom Donnelly from Larimer County. Thank you all for coming. Also want to go over the agenda so people understand what you're getting into for the next 2 hours. So we'll talk about the meeting format and how this is going to play out today. We're going to talk about how you can submit comments, people who are watching the stream live, and questions during the session. I'm going to talk about also what the purpose of the meeting is, what our strategy is. The partners will be discussing the strategy, the three-pronged strategy, as well as spending the bulk of the meeting responding to your comments and questions that you've submitted over the last few weeks. The exciting news is we've received over 270 comments and questions from members of the public. We're not going to be able to obviously respond to every single one of those, so we have grouped them into common themes, and we will attempt to respond to as many of those as possible tonight. If we don't get to your specific question, please feel free to contact me, and there'll be a contact information at the end of the website, the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer them. And then we'll also talk about next steps. So that's how we're going to proceed tonight. In terms of how you can participate, again, you can always continue to send us comments and questions. This is an ongoing process. There's really not an end to that part of it in terms of public involvement. But tonight, if you want to submit some live comments or questions, here's the means you can do that. You can go to our Facebook page, our tweet, or send an email to us. I'll leave that up there for a little bit so people can see that more, but we'd be happy to get your questions tonight. So the other piece I just want to start off before we jump further into the agenda is talk about some of the definitions and terms we use in the partnership. You're going to hear these terms over and over again, and we want everyone to be on the same page when we're using these. So for dispersed shooting, what we mean by that is random and dispersed shooting that occurs throughout public lands except in firearms closure areas. That's predominantly what you see in the mountains in the 4 counties. Designated shooting area, the definition of that is an area or a facility designated for firearms practice that is not typically overseen by supervisory personnel. So typically it's like the Baker Draw shooting range that the Forest Service has in the Pawnee grasslands. It's a wonderful facility, but there are no personnel on site supervising it. So the next definition is a shooting range / firing range, and that is a specialized facility designed for firearms practice, and each facility is typically overseen by one or more supervisorial personnel, like a range safety officer. So those are the 3 definitions, and we will show them again later on, but that's what we wanted to start off with, just so we're all talking the same language tonight. All right, so I'm going to ask each of the partners now to provide an update about where they're at in terms of this project. So the first piece is asking the partners to present the strategy for moving forward. And actually, let me back up. I'm going to ask Glenn Casamassa, the Forest Service, to talk about the purpose of the meeting, why we're here, what made him even think about joining this and helping to form this partnership. So, Glenn?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And one thing I want to do is thank Commissioner Gardner and the folks from Boulder County in hosting this 2-hour interactive meeting that we're having, and certainly the time that all of the county commissioners and the folks from CPW, Steve Yamashita, has put in. And just working with us on establishing what we perceive as a good partnership going forward. That said, some of the purpose and the reasons why we're here tonight is that just to back up a little bit with respect to when we started the partnership, it really was in 2013, and so folks may be thinking that, 2013, so what do you have to show for this now? And quite frankly, one of the things that we really had to do was get on the same page. We had to understand each other's issues, recognize and validate those concerns, and start talking in the same language and looking for some alignment as to how we can collectively provide opportunities that are sustainable while ensuring that we enhance or protect the health and safety and well-being of the county residents that work and live and recreate within the counties that the National Forest and county lands are in. So we started the partnership out in 2013, and of course we just talked about a multi-jurisdictional strategy that we wanted to implement that would provide safe, responsible, accessible recreational sports shooting opportunities while addressing certain conflict areas amongst recreational users and residents in northern Colorado along the Front Range. So as we stated, the partnership is comprised of some individuals, and the reason why our partnership is set up the way it is, some folks have asked about it, is that what we sought in our partnership was a group of individuals who some way in shape or form have some delegated authority or do have some ability to manage lands, and each one of the counties has done that and has the ability to do that, as well as Colorado Parks and Wildlife, along with the Forest Service. So the partnership was established through the use of those individuals or groups that manage lands. And we recognized that we needed to ensure that we work together on a multi-jurisdictional approach to providing opportunities. We had at various points in time work together, perhaps one or two of us together, county and the Forest Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and we were able to address certain kinds of issues that had arisen and provide some opportunities. Although overall we just recognized that, look, we need to be able to work across this 4-county area and really look at this in a multi-jurisdictional landscape approach. So that's what we're doing. In preparation of this meeting and some of the activities that we are working on now and into the future, we have established and made 3 informational videos about the strategy and the partnership. And if you haven't watched them yet, they're available on our website, and it's worth the time, we think, to take a look at that to provide you with some context in addition to what we're going to go over tonight as to where we are and where we're going. So really, the goal of this meeting is to gauge the partnership's development of the strategy to date. As some of you may have recalled, over the course of 2014, I believe, each county had hosted at least one meeting to gauge and provide information to the county residents as to what we are up to. So this is just a series and a progression of events that continues to provide you with information and ability to feedback. As Gary had made mention, not all of our questions will be answered tonight because we did get a wide variety of them, and quite frankly, we're really impressed, and we hope that they continue to come in so we can post them all on the website. So with that, I wanted to just focus in on the partnership strategy, and this is what we're really going to be talking about tonight. So number one, each county will identify potential designated shooting areas. Again, go back to that definition, and those are the kinds of things that each county was going to be looking at. We, the Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forest, we're going to begin our analysis on how to provide safe, sustainable, recreational sport shooting opportunities while providing for the health and safety of recreationists and residents within the county. So that's something that we're going to embark on in conjunction with the counties. And then another piece which is very valuable and most important, I think, when we round out our strategy is providing information and education for safe and responsible shooting. So all of those things are really what we're really looking at for your feedback tonight. And with that, I'll pass it back to Gary.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate that. So I'll be working with Mike, who's doing the web stream, and making sure we also are focusing on the slides so the audience knows some of the PowerPoint slides we're using tonight. So you may hear me saying, Mike, do this, Mike, do that. That's cues to the fellow behind the curtain. So now we're going to move towards each partner providing updates about how they've been involved in implementing the strategy. And throughout these presentations by the county commissioners, if you could focus on the two slides that we'll have up on there. One's called preliminary criteria and the other is the definitions. I appreciate that. So for the strategy one, as I said, each county is going to provide an update about where they're at in terms of identifying potential sites for designated shooting areas. So I'll ask Commissioner Gail Watson from Gilpin County to provide the first update. You have a couple minutes to do that.
All right, thank you, Gary. In the past 2 years, Gilpin County has held community meetings to discuss and share information with residents about our involvement with this partnership. The meetings were very well attended, and we've kept our county website updated with our progress in order to make this process transparent and to encourage citizen participation. Our goal is to find an appropriate site for a designated shooting area that does not adversely impact our residents and environment. This is not an easy process, and as of today, all of our preliminary sites have been withdrawn from consideration. We are now looking at 2 BLM tracts and 2 privately owned parcels that were offered for consideration by the owner. Now in our 3rd year, we are optimistic and looking closely at all possibilities for the safety of our residents and all recreational users of the forest in mind.
Great, thank you. I'll ask Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County to provide an update about Boulder County.
Sure. Thanks, Gary, and thanks all my partners for being here today and for everyone taking the time to watch and send in their comments. We began participating in this process at the very beginning, and we really we had 4 meetings, I think, one in each county, and we participated in those. But we began really trying to find sites, driving around and looking at, and potentially looking at the map. And most of that work came to a halt when the flood happened. And so we really have taken quite a hiatus from that as we've tried to recover from the flood. But now that is not our primary focus at the moment anyway. And so we have identified a list of places that we're going to go visit and begin that evaluation in terms of the criteria that I think Tom is going to talk a little bit more about. And then we'll begin a public process around each of those properties within Boulder County and also in partnership with our friends from the Forest Service. And tangential to that, then currently the Boulder County Land Use Code doesn't allow for the kinds of recreational sport shooting designated areas that we're talking about. And so we'll have to begin a land use update process for that as well, which will be a public process also. And so at each step along the way, there will be opportunities for the public to be engaged.
Great, thank you. I want to introduce Commissioner Tom Hayden from Clear Creek County.
It's 3 C's indeed. Thank you, Deb, for hosting this, and everybody for all your support. We have grown into quite a partnership team that we've developed a lot of trust among each other, and I think this is a good example, if there ever was one, of collaborative effort. In Clear Creek County, we recognize the same thing that Gilpin County has recognized, and that is that this is a whole lot more difficult and harder than we ever thought. With 74% of all the land in Clear Creek County belonging to public lands, most of which my good friend Glenn Casamassa is aware of, and it's not easy to find a spot. When you look at our criteria that is up on the screen right now, and you see that the criteria that this group came up with, that the distance from subdivisions of half a mile, single homes a quarter of a mile, recreation areas a quarter of a mile, slope 10% or less, and accessibility for your, hopefully more than a few months out of the year. As you know, it is different from every area is different. We found it very difficult to locate sites, suitable sites. We went through a preliminary list of about 13 sites, and for one of these many reasons got weeded out. We went back and revisited a few of them. We are in a little bit, I think, a better position than some of our partners in the fact that we do have, we've got 2 sites that are both, hopefully, well, one is on county land and the other one soon will be county land, we hope. They're close to I-70 with good access, and the noise should not be a problem on either site. We're very, very fortunate to have a site that's been identified by the Forest Service up on Highway 103 by Echo Lake called Devil's Nose, which has gone through a public review process. So our goal is to come up with 3 sites, and it's going to be a while. I want everybody to know that it is a full-time job. We've got 2 staff people that spend a lot of time on this. So with that said, I'll wrap it up.
Thank you, Tom. All right, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Tom Donnelly from Larimer County.
Thank you, Gary. Pardon me. First off, I'd like to thank Commissioner Gardner from Boulder County for strong leadership on this and bringing this issue forward. And I know the commissioner even attended our public meeting in Larimer County with me. So I want to thank her for kind of shepherding this process through. I think the first thing I would mention is that perhaps we haven't had quite the level of issues in Larimer County that you might have had in some of these other mountain counties. But that being said, I think there's always room for improvement, and we frequently hear from the shooting community that they'd like to see different improved opportunities to shoot in the county. The county used to own a range, for instance, many years ago that was closed. So I think our strategy is evolving still, but I think what we've done thus far is we've created an inventory of existing improved ranges in the county. I think that along with Gary Buffington, who's the director of our Natural Resources Department, who's here with me tonight, we'll plan to hold a series of public meetings in the fall to work with citizens and interested groups that might have a stake in sport shooting. And then following those meetings and based on the comments we receive, I think Larimer County will move forward with any kind of recommendation, whether to try to develop more improved sites rather on the plains, perhaps in the mountains, perhaps to partner with some of our private shooting clubs. We'll just have to see what happens. But so that's where we are right now.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Donnelly.
Very good.
All right, so we want to move to the next strategy, Strategy 2, which Glenn Casamassa will speak about with the Forest Service. And Mike, if you can also from time to time show the slide of definitions, I think that'll pertain perfectly to what Glenn's going to talk about. Glenn, you have about 5 minutes.
Great, thanks, Gary. Okay, so what we are really embarking on now, in conjunction with all of the work that's been done with the partnership, is, as Strategy 2 says, the National Forest System lands, that's the Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forest in Clear Creek, Gilpin, Boulder, and Larimer County primarily, We're going to begin this analysis on how to provide safe, sustainable recreational sports shooting opportunities while providing for the health and safety of recreationists and residents within those counties. So it's a tall order, but I think that's something that's our purpose. That's why we're doing what we're doing. A little bit of background, I do want to make mention that recreational sports shooting is a legitimate and long-time historic activity on the National Forest System lands that we intend to continue to provide opportunities. So that being said, the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forests are some of the most heavily visited and used national forests within the entire system. That's about 193 million acres across the country, 40 states and one Commonwealth. So we usually rank within the top 5 in the country for visitation and use. So not only is it a great place to live and work, but it is heavily visited and heavily used not only by residents of the county, residents of the state, and multi-millions of visitors within the United States and as well as internationally. So it's a pretty heavily used, very busy, great place to be. So with that, all of those kinds of uses, what we have really started to notice, particularly over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, is that a number of folks have been using the forest for a wide variety of activities, recreational sports shooting, hiking, biking, camping, day use, driving for pleasure, and a whole host of other activities that are occurring on the forest, far more in greater numbers than we have had in the past. So with that, a couple of things have happened that has changed the trajectory of all of this use, and one is that there has been a tremendous amount of increased development that's occurred on lands that are adjacent to the forest. The mixed ownership pattern in certain counties within the proclaimed forest boundaries. I think we have about 40,000 people, at least 40,000 people that are living within the proclaimed boundary of our forest, which is a tremendous number of folks. As well as a number of shooters that have come to the forest to recreate. So what we see is a tremendous amount of increase in the use, a tremendous amount of increase in the development that's occurring both within the forest and adjacent to the forest. And those kinds of activities, there's conflict, there is some concerns over health and safety, and really there is a number of reasons why we need to provide some designated shooting areas for those individuals who are recreationally shooting. One big thing that Commissioner Gardner had identified, which I think helped change or assisted in the change of where people were going to shoot, was the catastrophic floods that occurred primarily in Larimer and Boulder County in 2013. Really, the number of areas that people were going to are no longer available for them to go to while we're recovering from the flood. So that has changed a bit. When you look at the kind of activities that, as far as shooting is concerned on the forest, really our entire forest, with the exception of a few small areas, is open for dispersed shooting. That is primarily where we're at, and we feel that there's a need based on some of the concerns that have been raised and some of the opportunities that need to be provided, that we not only look at continually providing those dispersed shooting areas, but really to be looking at designated shooting areas are the two main places where I think the forest can provide those opportunities, with dispersed shooting and then designated shooting areas. And shooting ranges and our firing ranges, those are kind of developments that we would expect that could be provided off of the forest or through various private entities. So our niche in all of this is continue to provide dispersed shooting, designated shooting areas. So what we plan on doing is waiting for some of the activities to play out over the course of the next couple of months with the counties, and then we'll launch what we would consider an environmental analysis to provide input or allow for input and comments, concerns from the public as it relates to us providing dispersed shooting and designated shooting areas on the National Forest System land within the 4 counties. Thanks, Gary.
Could you expand a little bit, like what that process might entail, how long it might take?
Good. Well, we'll start the scoping process, which launches really the public involvement part of it this summer. And given the extent of the landscape that we actually have to work within, we would imagine that the entire analysis and decision-making process could take up to 2 years. We are hoping that it would get done in a bit more timely manner, given all of the work we've done with our partners, but we think that it'll take about 2 years.
And I'm assuming, like you said, that there'll be multiple opportunities for the public to provide input, to review drafts, alternatives, et cetera, throughout that.
Yes, the scoping process will be the first in many milestones that we would expect and hope that either the constituents within the counties or the public at large will be able to comment and work with us on.
Great. Thanks. Great. All right. I want to move on to strategy 3. And ask Steve Yamashita, the Northeast Regional Manager for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to share with the audience what we've been doing around the education strategy.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the time. After meeting for a short period of time, we all realized that a critical component of the partnership strategy is educating our public. And our public includes the citizens that live near areas that are currently being used as dispersed areas, and the shooters themselves. And it's kind of critical how we address this and informing and educating the sport shooters who are out there how to do it in a safe and reasonable manner. It's imperative if they're going to continue in areas where other users on these multiple uses on public lands, that they do so in a compatible fashion. We've done it in a myriad of different ways. We started out back in 2013. We had a series of open houses, just like Commissioner Gardner just mentioned. We went to each county and just tried to find out what their concerns and issues were. In addition, subsequently, we've realized what some of those issues were, and some of it was shooting safely on public lands. In order to get the word out, we created as a partnership a safe shooting brochure and flyer that is available on our website. If you choose to bring up our website and just print one out, we have them printed up already and are available for dispersal. In addition, down the road here, another video that we're hoping to create is how to shoot safely on public lands. We'll have that available. That'll be on our website as well. We're just hoping to hit different folks in different avenues, just so that they understand that it's not just about going on public land and just shooting. There's a degree of responsibility that's associated with it, and we're trying to help people understand how that is. In addition, we're going to launch a safe shooter campaign that will address recreational shooters and to be stewards of the land as well, and how they can help participate and show their support. Once we start developing some of these shooting areas, it will also offer a volunteer opportunity for those folks who are out there on a regular basis. On some of our public shooting areas right now, we have regular constituents who just volunteer their time to help keep the areas clean, to help not necessarily police the area, but help other shooters who maybe aren't quite as knowledgeable understand some of the responsibilities associated with safe shooting. So we help to promote a volunteer effort on some of our shooting areas as well. That's where we're heading and where we've been, but education is a critical component of it. To help launch some of these opportunities out there for shooting areas, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife has instituted a shooting range granting system that we offer on an annual basis. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough money that we can help get those who are interested, whether they're counties, local municipalities, clubs or sometimes recreational districts, we offer them some seed money. And with that seed money, we're hoping that they can use that in conjunction with other grant opportunities to get their feet off the ground. It's worked in many instances. We've got ranges all across Colorado now that have utilized this source of funding to get started. Like I said, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a good place to come to. CPW should be your first stop when you're thinking about trying to build a shooting area somewhere. It's been successful. They can be used for all types of different projects, whether they're building shooting benches, berms, other capital improvements. It's been very beneficial, and especially for the smaller communities out there. We're hoping to get this launched once we get these designated sites going. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say that it's been a wonderful endeavor, and we hope to continue working with the partners.
Thank you, Steve. Great. Now we've had all the partners.
Gary, could I make an additional comment?
Certainly.
The as we go through the strategies, and so one of the things, and Steve's going to talk more about it later when we talk about this particular area, but I think it's important to note, I know we had a lot of comments that people were concerned that part of the purpose of this partnership was to close areas to hunting. And as you look at the strategies and you hear our conversation up here, particularly from Glenn and Steve, I think it's important to note that that's not what this partnership is about. And the purpose of this partnership, and we have this on the website, but I think it's so clear, is to develop a landscape-level, multi-jurisdictional strategy to provide safe, responsible, and accessible recreational sports shooting opportunities while addressing conflicts near residential areas and other recreational users in the northern Colorado Front Range. And so closing areas to hunting is not anywhere near in our strategy.
Great, thank you. So we've heard now from the partners of the three-pronged strategy that the partnership has been developing, and we've asked you all to make comments and send in your questions. And so we've gotten over, like I said, 270, which we are really excited to have, and we've grouped them into common themes, and now I'm going to ask each partner to respond to those questions, and this is going to be informal. If there's an additional partner that wants to add something to the conversation or the response, feel free to do that. So we'll ask you to try to limit it to a couple minutes so we can try to get as many questions as possible. And Mike, we're going to have different slides up. If you can just from time to time just focus in on the slides that we have, appreciate that. So Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County, I'm going to ask you the first question is, why are other partners not included in this partnership? For instance, shooting clubs, the NRA, et cetera.
I think that's a very valid question, but as Glenn pointed out earlier, that the members of this partnership are all the land management entities in the area of the 4 counties that we're talking about. And so we're working to identify sites, and then we'll be the land managers that can create that process to designate those areas. But that process in each case, although it will be different in each entity, that will be a public process. And during that public process is when all those individuals and shooting groups and shooting clubs and everyone else can be engaged in the process. And we certainly invite you to be a part of that. But even in the interim, as you pointed out, we've got up there on the slide now, places where you can check the website, you can Twitter, you can Facebook, you can send us questions, comments as we go along. So don't hesitate to do that. And we'd also invite you, as you've heard from all of us, that it's a little bit of a struggle to find sites. And so you have that perfect piece of land that even if you're a private entity, don't hesitate to tell us, because we could use all the eyes on the ground I think that we could have.
Good. Thanks. All right, for question 2, Clear Creek County Commissioner Tom Hayden, how will site management be handled? For example, fees, safety features, time restrictions, noise?
We don't know what we don't know. And there's a lot that we've been able to learn from some of our neighboring counties that do have actually developed shooting areas. Use, for example, Chaffey County, Summit County, Grand County, Park County, to where they have, and including the one that is out on the Pawnee National Grassland. Every single one of these shooting areas that are already out there are different in so many ways. Our topography is not flat, it's more or less vertical. So we face an issue with sound traveling in directions where you don't want it to. It just doesn't go out and disappear over the prairie. It bounces into canyon walls. We've got, so it's going to be different, I think, for every single county. Safety, I'm going to keep saying this again and again. Safety, I think, is the number one criteria that we're after here, not only for the shooters, but for the other users of the forest and of the ground. I think that our goal is to hopefully have free sites available and not something you would need to pay for. As far as the management of them goes, we've seen sites throughout the United States that are managed by volunteer clubs that come out on the weekends during busy times and provide instruction and provide advice. There are many public shooting areas that are not managed with any personnel, and they seem to work exceptionally well. People tend to do a very good job of taking care of an opportunity when you provide that opportunity to them. We envision simple, very simple and basic infrastructure, such as trash cans and signage. And some sites may have developed berms and sound barriers. Some sites may have toilets. Some sites may have porta potties. It's going to differ. Every single site is different. And the 3 sites that we're looking at in Clear Creek County, all 3 of those are completely different. There is no one model that works. So, like I said, we're going to be open.
Great, thank you. And I would just urge, if there's any members of any shooting groups or nonprofits or volunteer neighborhood groups that would like to explore partnering with any of us, any of the counties and the Forest Service, CPW, please contact me, and we'd like to start those conversations.
Gary, I just might add on that, and that is that when we've gone out and contacted people that are using dispersed shooting areas, that the people that we contact, the shooters themselves, are very supportive of what we're trying to do. I would say over 95% of them offer help in how they could come out and assist with this program. They too want a safe area to shoot. So,
great, thank you. Next question is I'll ask Gilpin County Commissioner Gail Watson. Why are all the partnership counties offering or required to provide sites?
Well, as we've stated a number of times this evening, this is a landscape effort. And to be clear, what that means is that we're looking at the big picture. We're looking at Colorado's northern Front Range and trying to manage a response for that entire area. We know from experience that closures in one location result in more activity in others. So each county is looking for a possible designated shooting area. This is an effort to mitigate some of the safety issues of shooting on public land and the conflicts that can arise when other recreational users and residents, especially important now as the Front Range population continues to grow. So we're trying to address this. Obviously, it's not a quick process, but the population density in the Front Range just continues to multiply. So we have to start somewhere, and this is the place.
Thank you. Next question asks Steve Yamashita, Northeast Region Manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Will the partnership, or has the partnership visited other ranges, shooting areas to capture successful models?
Yes, as a matter of fact, several of the partners have already participated in tours to various ranges throughout the state. In addition, I think there's opportunities down the road. We looked at different sites and how they were set up, and we looked at different models and how they were run. it's quite important to realize that different people want different things. So we shouldn't all offer the same thing through a cookie cutter. We need to look and see what the needs of the community are and address it there. Some of them, as Commissioner Hayden mentioned, should be free to the public and just allow them to participate on an ad hoc basis, shoot when they want. Others need to be more formalized. We have a shooting range at Cherry Creek State Park that runs thousands of people through the range on a daily basis, and it needs to be very orchestrated. So we have a range manager, safety officer there on site whenever operations are open. So we need to make sure that we offer to the community what the community wants. So it's critical that we take a look at all that's out there.
Right, thank you. All right, Larimer County Commissioner Tom Donnelly, can you answer this next question? Will residents of other counties be allowed to use these shooting sites?
And I think the answer is, of course. If these ranges are on public lands, of course they'll be open to the public for anyone to use. Thank you, Gabby, for giving me the signal there. We know residents from around the North Front Range are currently shooting in our forests and are looking for places to shoot. And as Commissioner Hayden mentioned earlier, a vast majority of those individuals would like to have a safe shooting area available to them. So right now, we know folks are already shooting in these areas. We know they want a safe environment that they can shoot in. And so I think trying to develop those resources for people is important. One other thing I think as far as public input is concerned is that you don't have to live in the county to make public comment on this. You don't have to. Right now, a number of folks in Larimer County, for instance, shoot in the Pawnee Grasslands in Wilford and Will County. So we want folks who will use these ranges to be actively engaged in the process so that we get the very best results we can.
Thank you. All right, for the next question, I'll ask Glenn Casamassa, who's the forest supervisor for the Arapahoe-Roosevelt National Forest. Does the partnership expect that a designated area will focus use to areas with built-in facilities, thus mitigating fires, trash, damage, safety concerns, and noise by regulating dispersed shooting? There's a lot in that question, Glenn.
I'll break it down in various parts and pieces, but just to be clear that based on our experience and the things that we oversee, that the number one human cause for fires on the forest is unattended campfires. Far and away that is the number one cause of fires, human cause fires. So the expectation is that if we can provide designated shooting areas for people to go to, we will continue to do that in a safe manner. We'll reduce certain risks associated with wildfire. We'll reduce certain safety concerns. We'll also mitigate to varying degrees, potential noise based on the baffling systems and the use of berms. So we know that directing people to places where they're actually asking us that we provide would potentially mitigate a whole host of concerns that are presently going on the forest from people that are just dispersed shooting and a number of other recreational activities that are occurring. So yes, I think that there will be some mitigation associated with that. We would expect in designated shooting areas that we would provide some amenities that are not available to folks now that would provide that, again, additional safe and healthy areas to designated shoot in. So that would be good. And another thing that I think is really key is that what we're looking for is that if you provide designated shooting areas in various locations throughout the counties, that you'll take the pressure off all of the other areas that people are now at. We can redirect a number of folks to the places where they actually want to be. So.
And some of the amenities that we've seen in some of the tours we've taken of other designated shooting areas include things like parking, trash, receptacles, and even restroom facilities.
Yeah, and
benches, things like that.
And I would add, Gary, that I know we stood up with the help of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the National Rifle Association, a designated shooting area out on the Pawnee. It's a very successful place to Baker draw designated shooting area, and it's gotten overwhelming support. Certainly, it is used every day of the week. But some of the amenities that we started out with were safety berms. We have 25, 50, and 100-yard ranges. We have about 30 benches that are across all three of those different lanes. We have a good parking lot. And now, based on the use and the activity associated with it, we're putting in restroom facilities. So I think what Commissioner Hayden said about we just don't know what is going to be out there on each one of these areas. I think it's dependent on the site and the level of use. But certainly we have the ability to continue to add a certain amount of amenities with each one of these sites and concentrate the use. One thing that I can add too about the Baker Draw, the shooting area there, what we found is that when we provide that use on the National Forest System, on the Pawnee grasslands, that we've noticed, based on our contacts with the public, that the dispersed shooting has dropped significantly on the Pawnee, and the concentration of use is within the Baker Draw area. So while there are still people that are out there dispersed shooting, providing folks with a designated shooting area is what I think the public wants and what they're asking for, and it will be used.
All right, thanks. That leads to the next question about, will there be costs involved in developing these sites, and who will pay? Steve Yamashita with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to respond to that.
Yes, there will be costs associated with it, not only in the development but in the operation of those shooting areas. We fully expect that. I think it's the cost of doing business, though. That's one of the reasons why Colorado Parks and Wildlife offers this granting process, to allow for a sort of a kickoff on offsetting some of those costs. There's myriad different ways. The National Rifle Association offers grants as well. Some of the counties have been very instrumental in chipping in. Colorado Parks and Wildlife partnered with Park County a number of years ago and jointly purchased a parcel of land in order to build a shooting area on it. So those opportunities are out there. You just have to look for them and cooperate and work with each other.
Yeah, Commissioner Gardner.
I would just add, thanks, Steve, that we're all committed to making the investment that we need to reduce the conflict. And I think that across the board, that we know, and we knew going into this partnership, that there would be costs associated just with the process, and then ultimately with the siting and operations. And we're at the table because we want to find a solution, and we're committed to spending the money we need to make it happen.
Thank you. All right. Glenn Casamassa with the Forest Service has another real important question people have asked about. Is the partnership proposing that shooting be only allowed in designated shooting areas? What about all the dispersed shooting? Is that going to be closed off once you have a couple of range shooting areas designated?
Yeah, and that is a very important point and a very good question, and that we have been fielding that for several months now. But primarily, it is not our intent to eliminate dispersed shooting across this landscape. There may be some areas where it's not appropriate given the housing density and the criteria that we're going to, but we believe that even in addition to the designated shooting areas, that there will still be opportunities for dispersed shooting across this landscape.
And is that those decisions going to be made through your scoping process, through your forest plan amendment process?
Certainly the analysis that we're doing for the National Forest System lands within the four counties will be looking at where are those areas that we will continue to provide dispersed shooting opportunities, where are those areas that we will designate shooting areas on, and then in addition to that, based on the housing density and the limitations associated with safe shooting, where potentially some dispersed shooting will be prohibited. So that's sort of the array of what we're thinking through based on our work with strategy and some of the ongoing assessment work that we're doing on the forest.
Commissioner Hayden.
Gary, thank you. I might just add that I think that is the driving force that attracted Clear Creek to this partnership. Is we experience about 160 law enforcement calls a year to respond to target shooting, most of which is on the National Forest. We firmly believe that we cannot manage that dispersed shooting that is problematic to residences until we can provide and build for a location to where we can send people or suggest that they go there. So that, I think, is the important thing that everyone out there that's listening needs to understand. It's Glenn said, he spoke to the balance, I think, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're certainly not saying no, but we're trying to address this very problematic issue.
Great, thank you. So the next question I'll ask for Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County. There's been efforts like this in the past on a broader scale. Why will this effort, in your view, be different than past shooting sports partnership efforts?
Thanks, Gary. I think there's a few reasons. One, the previous efforts tended to focus on closing areas to shooting, and I think as Commissioner Hayden and Glenn had talked out, this needs to be a balanced process, both in timing and action, and that we're trying to find designated areas as well as potentially closing some areas that it's not safe. And I think that balanced process is going to make this more successful too. I think we have the right people around the table that can make the decisions about how land use efforts are going to be made in each of the entities. And I think third, as Steve mentioned, this process probably to some looking from the outside has taken longer than they would have expected, but we've taken the time to develop the trust between all of us that when we're talking about this tough issue, then we know that we're speaking the truth and what we think and believe, and we're representing our populations as best we can, and that's the only way you really get to solutions. And so I think that's the big reason. That's the reason this will be different.
Great, thank you. All right, now I'll ask Larimer County Commissioner Tom Donnelly to respond to this question. We've had a lot of comments from responsible shooters who've also participated in the open houses, and they want to know, how can they support this effort?
Great question. And I think one of the most commonly asked questions of me from shooting groups and sports shooters in the last 6 years that I've been in office is about how can we get more improved, dedicated shooting ranges developed in our county and in the National Forest. And so the first piece of advice I would give the shooting community would be to stay involved in this process until the end, and that includes the public process that the counties are going to go through in the coming months. Tell your friends, your family, your club members, those that you shoot with, tell them to get involved as well. Again, be part of the public process when we develop our dates for our public hearings. Send in ideas to this group through their Facebook page or their website to give us ideas on how to foster safe shooting. Offer to volunteer, as Commissioner Hayden mentioned. There's not going to be any shortage of work that needs to be done, and so many friends of shooting, we can certainly put them to work with education, a number of different situations. So I think the most important thing you can do is set a good example for your peers in the shooting community. Be a good neighbor, be a safe shooter, and participate in this process.
Great. Yes, sir. Commissioner Hayden.
I might just add quickly on Commissioner Donnelly's comment there. We're lucky in Clear Creek County in that you can drive within 20 minutes of all our multiple dispersed shooting sites, and so we've taken brochures out and posted them on parking areas where people are shooting, advising them about this partnership and how they can be involved. and we've gotten some feedback. It's all been positive. All of it has been positive, along with the concern: are you going to shut dispersed shooting down, which Glenn Casamassa spoke to. But there is an opportunity, as Commissioner Donnelly said, for them to be involved. I think we need to remind everybody out there that's listening that there is going to be a complete transparent process for every single site that is considered, whether it's a scoping process with the Forest Service or it's a land use with the counties. In any case, we're doing it right. We're not just rushing into anything.
Great, thank you. For the next question, I'm going to ask Commissioner from Gilpin County, Gail Watson, to respond. So, as everyone knows, or people have looked at the website, each of the county has produced a map of the preliminary criteria they've used about potential suitable locations for shooting areas. Can you talk more about those maps and how people should look at them, and maybe even give you an example of how Gilpin's used it?
Certainly. In the spring of 2013, the partnership developed preliminary criteria for identifying potential opportunities for developed shooting areas. This criteria was mapped using the GIS data from every county and then presented at open houses held in each county during the summer of 2013. Meeting the preliminary criteria was just the starting point, as site-specific issues are then considered. There may be sites that did not meet the criteria, but may still be appropriate after further analysis. This certainly happened with Gilpin County, where we identified more sites than 5, but we winnowed it down to 5 sites, which we then presented to the public. And then after meeting with a lot of community members and looking closely at those sites, they all fell off. They all were withdrawn for one reason or another. Many of it was proximity to residential neighborhoods. So we then went out and looked at the county a little closer, and we found a few other sites that weren't on our initial criteria list. And so that's what we're looking at now. 2 that are on BLM land and 2 that are privately owned. Each county is at a different stage of the process in determining possible sites for designated shooting areas. And before any decision regarding the development of a shooting area is made, a thorough site-specific analysis will be needed to conducted to determine if such development is appropriate. This would include safety and environmental analysis, among other criteria, as well as opportunities for the public to provide comment. The maps and criteria are available both on the partnership website and on each individual county website.
Great, thank you. So the next question, you somewhat alluded to and used the word balance, and that's what people have asked. How do you achieve balance in something like this on public lands? And I wanted to ask maybe Glenn Casamassa from the Forest Service and Steve Yamashita from Colorado Parks and Wildlife to take a stab at providing what your viewpoint on how do you achieve balance in this activity.
I'd say that it is challenging. It's hard. We recognize that there are many uses that are occurring on the landscape, and that each individual entity, that either from the county, the state, or the federal government, we all manage or administer lands, but we all do it for different kinds of purposes. So meshing that all together is something that is a challenge. We do recognize, though, that the balance can be better served between all of the recreational shooters, as well as all of the other recreationists that are using the national forests and all the public lands. Balance can be better served, or it can be achieved to a higher degree if we work together over a multi-jurisdictional landscape rather than through individually managing the uses. So it's a hard thing, but we recognize that there's value in doing it collectively rather than individually. And what we are trying to achieve is that balance between all of the various uses. And how do you provide sustainable recreational sport shooting opportunities while ensuring that other activities and residents within the counties can actually ensure the public health and safety. So it's a tough balance, but that is one of the big reasons why we're getting together and why we're working collectively across this landscape.
Thanks. Steve?
I agree, Glenn. Managing public lands is really managing conflict. There's so many uses out there that they're constantly getting in each other's way. So it's a matter of trying to get the most beneficial use for the most users out there. Sometimes some things go away, others stay, but still, not all lands are multiple use properties. Many of the federal BLM and Forest Service lands are, of course, but Parks and Wildlife has lands that have some specific uses, and some uses are inappropriate on those. Some are purchased specifically for wildlife use only. Some are specifically for recreational uses, and sometimes they aren't managed for multiple use. So I think people just need to understand that the different lands are managed in different capacities.
Great, thanks. Well, I'm excited to say that we've gotten a Facebook question, so I'd like to ask that now, and hopefully that'll encourage other people to either tweet, email us, or Facebook us. So this is really for the county commissioners. Most people go to the U.S. Forest Service land to shoot because that is the only option on public lands. What are the counties willing to do to provide shooting and hunting opportunities on lands that the county owns? So who would like to start as one of the commissioners?
Well, I'll start by saying we don't have any county land.
So Gilpin County doesn't have any, so they're...
Someone else is going to have to handle that question.
Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County?
Sure, I'll jump in. I can almost guess who wrote that question, so thank you. I think it's a difficult issue in that right now, under our current public land use for parks and open space, our regulations say that there is no hunting allowed on, and there is no shooting allowed. And so, but we do, and it's because the land was purchased using open space tax dollars. But we do have some land that was not purchased with open space dollars. And so, and there's also an opportunity to switch out different pieces of property that we have. So the potential to have shooting on land that we own is not impossible. There is a process for that to happen if it was suitable for that. And so, but most of the land that we own is south of the peak to peak. I think we don't own as much north of the or west of the peak to peak, and so. But we haven't ruled out land that we own as a potential. And from the hunting standpoint, I think where we are, I know there was someone else that individually had asked me the question of, well, one, now they would like to have access across open space land to be able to access some federal land for hunting. And we are reviewing, and currently that's not allowed, but we, because of the question, are reviewing that process and are going through the process to review that rule and trying to find a way that we can maybe change that, because that's not our intention, is not to close off access to federal land for hunting.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayden from Clear Creek County.
Deb, I thought that comment came from Clear Creek County, not Boulder County. But
it's a universal question.
It is a universal question, but interesting that to point out the differences that each county has. For example, Deb mentioned that they have to work. Commissioner Gardner mentioned they need to work through to change their zoning regulations. In Clear Creek County, we have an outdoor recreation zoning district. And we have engaged our open space committee to consider the use of some open space property to fall under our review for a developed shooting area. And they're open to it, but once again, you run into the criteria that we keep showing everybody about how difficult this is to obtain some type of balance here with the community. So it is very difficult to achieve what we're after there. We are actually considering using one property is owned by the county, and we hope to develop that into a shooting area. And the other area that we're pursuing would need to be purchased by the county, and it would be purchased with open space funds, we hope. So,
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Donnelly, Larimer County.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. As I mentioned earlier in my comments, Larimer County at one time did manage the shooting range on county lands. Unfortunately, the city of Fort Collins kind of grew around that range, and so it had to be closed down. And so, like I mentioned, one thing I've heard from citizens over the years is the need to reestablish a Larimer County range. And so we've had a history of providing that service, and we certainly aren't or are amenable to getting into that business again. As far as hunting, we do allow hunting on some of our Larimer County open spaces. The Red Mountain open space, currently we worked with the Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife to allow a specific number of elk tags and deer tags to be issued for hunts on those lands. And so we feel like hunters pay open space sales taxes as well as every other type of recreational user, and so we want to try to find some different situations where they can actively participate in hunting on some of our open spaces. So we've tried to do that as well.
Great, thanks. So again, I want to just urge anybody who's watching the virtual meeting tonight to feel free to submit any questions. We have up on the screen right now the way you can do that. And we're about halfway through our meeting, so there's plenty of time for you to get your questions answered. So the next question I'll ask Commissioner Hayden from Clear Creek County. You know, we really asked people to focus on the partnership in this meeting, but where should citizens direct their questions about safety concerns, noise, litter, etc.?
the only avenue that people have, I think, in all of our counties is to contact your local law enforcement. And as I alluded to, this is one of the reasons why Clear Creek County has got involved in this, is because the amount of telephone calls to our dispatch center, we call them target shooting. Other counties call them something else. But it costs us roughly $8,000 to $10,000 a year, the taxpayers, to respond to these calls, which is good, and we want that. We never discourage anybody from calling the sheriff's office or 911. There is a process where we do engage the Colorado Parks and Wildlife if it's on state land. We do engage the U.S. Forest Service with their law enforcement personnel. All that is handled through the county, as is every county, through the local sheriff's office dispatch center. So call 911. It may take a while to get there. In many of our cases, we do have a delayed response because of the distance traveled, and when we get there, we find out that the shooter or the activity has ceased and they've moved on. But in any case, that is the answer. Any other questions about how could we better develop a site? Go to our website, engage through our Twitter or Facebook account.
Okay, thank you. So another real widely repeated question is there's concern or suspicion that the goal, actually the intent of the partnership, is to close areas to shooting. So I wonder if Glenn Casamassa with the Forest Service can shed more light about, is that the intent? Is the intent really here to close areas for shooting to shooters, or can you explain more?
Well, based on who we are and what we're all about, really the intent of what we want to provide is additional areas for designated shooting. I mean, that's our whole purpose, that designated shooting areas that are safe. Does that mean that if there are unsafe activities occurring that we would not take action? Well, we have done that repeatedly in small closures across the National Forest System land, and we would continue to do that on a case-by-case basis, and it is really based on the health and safety issues that are occurring on a site-specific spot. That being said, though, our overarching purpose is to provide additional places for people to shoot safely. So really, it's all about keeping places open.
Okay. And again, I guess the converse of that is, I think there's some folks that would really like to see the whole national forest closed to shooting. They feel it's not safe or appropriate in their neighborhoods. What's your response to that sentiment?
Well, certainly that's why we continue to go through a multi-jurisdictional approach to this, is that we recognize that if we do something on the national forest, then perhaps that use will not go away. It will be displaced to some other area. So we do believe that there are some places based on the criteria that is out there that we've developed, that some areas will fall out from consideration of either a designated shooting area or dispersed shooting opportunities, and that there will be some places around the national forest in the 4 counties that may be closed where recreational shooting is going to be prohibited.
Great, thank you. All right, another question is about archery. Is that being considered in addition to, the discharge of firearms? Maybe Commissioner Hayden can respond to that one from Clearview County.
We have considered that. One of the sites that we're looking at that it's large enough to accommodate hopefully many of the different uses that are involved with a designated shooting area. I think Steve alluded to earlier that some sites are suitable, accommodate a pistol only, others rifle with 100, 200 yards, and then there's limited numbers that accommodate skeet shotgun shooting. In addition to all those uses, we'd like to, if it can be safely done, incorporate archery range into this site, because we have, archery. I think Steve Yamashita can speak to this. There's a huge need for that, and we also have local 4-H clubs that need a spot to shoot. So any use such as that, yeah, if it can be done safely.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Gail Watson from Gilpin County. Will the identification of potential designated shooting areas be limited just to the Forest Service lands?
No, we certainly did look at U.S. Forest Service land, but we also looked at land owned by or managed by Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife. And we also looked at BLM holdings, excuse me, and we looked also at some private land when it was offered by the owner. In general, we're not looking at private land, but U.S. Forest Service, BLM, CPW, and in some instances, the counties are looking at their own open space lands.
Great, thanks. Next question is about enforcement. We heard this over and over again. So you develop some shooting areas. You might close some areas through the Forest Service plan process that are not appropriate or safe for shooting. Well, then how are you going to enforce? How are you going to enforce this? So I'd ask Steve Yamashita with Colorado Parks and Wildlife to respond to that.
Well, I guess we have to understand where we're putting these shooting sites. Typically, these shooting sites are going to be more remote areas, of course, by design, keep them away from residences and other conflicts. So as a result of that, they're going to be further away from law enforcement officers. The Forest Service and Parks and Wildlife have a limited number of officers anyway. Typically on a forest, there are very few officers that are readily available to respond. And our district wildlife managers, who are our primary enforcement officers, they're limited in nature as well. They generally cover a 2 or 3 county area per one officer. So the reality is somebody's not going to be able to respond every single time when a call comes in. Sheriff's officers, there may be more of them, but they also covering a very large, expansive area. So I think what our citizens should be prepared for is to be good witnesses, to provide the best information they possibly can so that we can, if somebody is participating in an illegal activity, that we have the best information that we can render a successful prosecution. That points to a lot of different things. To be a good witness, An individual needs to take down the best information they possibly can, whether that's vehicle license plate numbers, identifying who the suspect is, and what illegal activity that they're participating in. Quite often we get calls that somebody's doing something, but we don't know who it was because they didn't see who participated in the activity, only that there was a vehicle associated with it. So we urge our citizens to be very good witnesses, get down the best possible information they can. If they can take a photograph with their smartphone or something, that's great. But don't do it at the risk of yourself. Never put yourself in jeopardy. I would urge them to be discreet whenever they do anything, and not to put themselves between them and the violator. But if they can get the best information possible, relay that on to the local law enforcement agency, then we can do our best effort prosecuting those cases.
Great. Glenn, maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience at Baker Draw, where you've had some law enforcement presence early on when it was opened, and how that's kind of set a tone, and how other responsible shooters kind of help manage some of these facilities and enforce some of the rules.
And I think that's right, Gary, that what we recognize in conjunction with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife is that we did provide presence when the area was the designated shooting area was open, and we continued to provide that presence for maybe the first month or so while it was open and people discovered it. And what we recognize is that the tone that was set by us being there, the pride that individuals took in actually utilizing the site. Really, it shifted law enforcement or enforcement of the rules associated with Baker Draw were really based on individuals, and it was self-policing, if you will. And I think what we found over the course of time is more and more of what we're seeing there is people are self-policing. They're cognizant of and recognizing the other users in the area. And it is more of what I think that they wanted was, we just want a place to shoot that's safe, that we can be responsible on. So all of those things, I think, has helped us cut down on our law enforcement calls into that area.
Well, perfect timing. We have another question from Facebook. Will there, I'll ask any of you to respond to this, will there be increased funding for hiring law enforcement because of new shooting areas being designated and developed? And how many officers are currently available on Forest Service or county land?
Well, I can start by saying that I don't anticipate any increase in funding for additional law enforcement on the National Forest System lands within the 4 counties. Presently on the forest, we have we have four law enforcement officers for the 4 counties. So, the forest is 1.6 million acres. So, those 4 folks are scattered over that particular large area. So, no, we don't anticipate any additional funding, and no, we're not going to get it. We don't perceive that there's going to be any more than the four law enforcement officers that we have now.
Okay. Mr. Donnelly?
I'd be happy to take a shot at it. We don't anticipate having additional revenue to hire officers either. However, what we've learned to do in Larimer County is work with all of our partners to try to maximize the coverage we have, whether that's a sheriff's deputy, whether that's one of our Larimer County park rangers, who are almost all sworn deputies, whether it's a Parks and Wildlife ranger, or another one of our law enforcement partners from the state or the federal government. We've learned to work together and rely on each other, because sometimes out there, there's a friendly face is pretty far away. So I think we've really worked hard to try to partner to get the maximum results we can. And so I don't see that there's a real issue as far as our ability to respond in an emergency situation, but obviously we can always do a better job.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hayden.
Commissioner Donnelly, I think the magic word was respond to an emergency situation. And so many of the calls that we get that I think we're talking about here, are we going to add additional officers? Clear Creek County cannot afford to add any additional officers. However, if it is an emergency call as opposed to, I've been listening and hearing gunfire for the last 2 hours, there's a difference there. So we sort that out.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gardner?
Well, I'm in the same position as my partners here in that, no, there wouldn't be any additional funding for additional officers. And I think theoretically, if we do this right, then there would be fewer conflicts between residents and shooters and other recreationalists. And so potentially there would be a need for, I don't anticipate us cutting officers either. I'm not going to try and imply that, but I think there wouldn't be the need for additional officers, and hopefully would be staffed correctly to manage the safety issues that would come up.
Thank
you. I would echo your comment that we would hope that it would reduce some of the conflict. But I would, just as a note to the partnership, suggest that we reschedule the law enforcement meeting that was scheduled but canceled because of the flood. Because I know that our sheriff has some concerns about what that will mean to his staffing, his department. So it's just a note that I thought I'd add here.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, another question we've had, it's really commonly heard is, and I'll ask Commissioner Deb Gardner from Boulder County to respond to this. Can you provide a timeline of when counties expect to have sites approved and opened?
As I think you've heard, it's a great question, and but as you've heard us all speak here, we're all on kind of different timelines and different points in the process. But I think as an overreaching goal as a partnership, then our intention would be that all of the counties and the Forest Service and CPW in partnership would have identified some sites in this year, 2015, and at least begin the process, the land use process and public processes on each of our entities to be able to get to the point where we are doing the construction work in 2016 on at least 1 or 2 sites in each county. That would be our hope, but land use doesn't always move quite as linearly as you might like. And then that would also be then in conjunction, I think, with, as Glenn laid out, his timeline for the analysis of use and appropriateness and safety on the Forest Service. So again, we're in a delicate balance here, and we're trying to do it together as a partnership and not have any of us get out in front of the other, because I think that is not a recipe for success, and that we'll be moving together.
Yeah, I would just say that, and Commissioner Hayden had mentioned this early on, that the Forest Service has gone through its environmental analysis for a site in Clear Creek County and did receive a small grant from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to do some engineering design study. So I think my sense is the anticipated date for that being constructed is probably 2016. And as everyone has said, this is a long long intensive process, and and it feels drawn out since it's been 2013. But it's important that there'll be many opportunities for the public to give comment. So that's going to take time. We want to make sure we do this right. So the best way for folks to stay apprised of what's going on is to sign up for email updates at sportshootingpartners.org. I have that slide on the screen right now. And if you go to our website, on the bar there it says project information. There are contacts for each county that you can contact to find out exactly where each county is at in terms of their review process. Or you're welcome to contact me as well. Okay, I think we're doing. Yes.
Can I make one?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Donlin.
Yeah, I think from Larimer County's perspective, we would hope to be able to identify two to three sites through our public process, and I think that we would envision being able to get those sites approved and opened in the next 2 years. So that would be our goal for folks listening from Larimer County.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So we did get another email question in from someone who's watching tonight. And this person was asking, will the proposed designated shooting areas be handicap accessible? Would anyone like to respond to that?
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
I think that some of the sites may be not accessible for anybody, depending upon the weather, which is one of the criteria that we had is accessibility. But we've got a couple of sites, 3 or 4 in Clear Creek County, that were not selected, did not make the cut because of that reason, topography and weather and depth of snow and wind and cold temperatures. So I would think that if I can say that of the 2 sites that Clear Creek County is looking at diving into here the next couple of years, they will be handicap accessible.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's an important input that, people should be contributing during the site-specific review process. But my sense, Make a Draw is handicap accessible.
It is, and that's one of the things that we worked with Colorado Parks and Wildlife on, was ensuring that it was handicap accessible.
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah.
Steve Yamashita. If people put in for our granting process, since they are federal funds, that's one of the criteria that they would have to be ADA accessible.
Great, thank you.
Gary,
yes, sir.
Can I mention another thing too?
Commissioner Donnelly, you bet.
Thank you. I don't want to take all the time here, but I don't know if you knew this, but we have the largest 4-H program in the state of Colorado, and so I believe we have the largest 4-H sports shooting program as well. And so making sure that you have a site that anyone can get to and anyone can use, whether they're regardless whether they're a kid, anyone from a kid to someone who's maybe elderly. I think that's really important to us. And so making sure that these sites are available to the general public, and we mean all the public, is really important and a priority.
Okay, great, thank you. So another question is, say the partnership is successful in identifying shooting sites that meet the criteria, and they develop some ranges, and they actually through the Forest Service process, there are areas that are determined not to be appropriate or safe for shooting and closed for dispersed shooting. What will happen to those areas? Is there a plan to remediate them, to restore them?
And good question, Gary. The overall, what we do traditionally with all activities associated with the forest that once were and now are no longer is that we take a look at and assess what, if any, kind of mitigation we need to do for all sites. So yes, in whatever dispersed shooting areas that perhaps will be closed in the future, we would expect that we would assess them, and then we would do the necessary mitigation to restore them.
All right, as a follow-up to that question, will there be signage posted in those areas that were prior very available for shooting, commonplace for dispersed shooting, and now are not, based on the findings of your study?
And that's another issue associated with information and education. Part of our strategy is that yes, there will have to be certain information that's provided. We've done that in the past to ensure that people are aware of where they can and can't do a whole host of activities, but certainly for shooting, we would make folks aware of where areas would be prohibited.
Okay, great. Another common question is, well, how many ranges or how many designated shooting areas is each county going to provide? What's your goal? Is it just one? Is it anyone want to field that question?
Well, I'll jump in. I think our goal is not to have a specific number, but to have places that are safe. And so I think we've all kind of thrown out 2 or 3 per county was ideal goal, but I don't know if that will be possible until we go through the process. And I think what we're trying to shoot for is to have enough sites that we're able to accommodate the population we know that's out there to be able to shoot safely. And so my gut reaction is one isn't enough, and we need to have more than that throughout the county to really meet the need that we know is out there now because of the people that are currently going and doing dispersed shooting.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Hayden.
Deb, I agree. I think it's going to be difficult to be maybe more finite with the answer. It's going to be difficult for any of these counties to obtain more than 3. I think possibly some of us may get 5. We need to understand and remember that this is what I refer to as a mobile problem, and that so if for example, if Clear Creek County is lucky enough to develop 3, that will help our neighbor in the partnership, Gilpin County. If Boulder County can develop, 1 or 2 or 5, this is not about developing as many as possible. It is going to be very difficult to develop 1, 2, or 3. This is a very, very difficult task.
Commissioner Watson.
Well, I'd like to say that while we know that the population of recreational sports shooters in the Front Range is very large, the population of my county is not, and there has to be some correlation, and so we're not looking for 3 sites. We'd be very happy to find one that could handle some of the folks in our county shooting and also visitors. We're also hoping that the benefit of this designated area is a range for our sheriff's deputies to train on. So I just had to step back a little bit. We're not, just based on the size of the county, we're not looking at 3.
Great, thanks. Another related question has come up a number of times too, and that's about is the partnership considering designating shooting areas in the plains? And one of the things I've heard is, well, if you build it in the plains, then they won't even come up to the mountains. So can you respond to that thinking? And who would like to do that? Well, you don't even have any plains, but okay, Commissioner Hayden.
No, but I think I can attest to the fact that when people get off the airplane at DIA, they do not go to the eastern Colorado and watch the grass grow. They come to the mountains. And so if you're looking for an outdoor activity, a spot to go take your kid out and teach them how to shoot a .22, naturally people are drawn to the mountains or the foothills.
Gary?
Yeah, Steve
Yamashita. I look at it another way. I think most people associate public lands along the Front Range with the mountains. That's where they go to find public lands, not out east, which is predominantly private lands. So I think if we designate some areas that are closer in, don't require them to travel too far out on the plains, we could. And we're working with some smaller communities, some towns that are along the Front Range, just out in the plains. There's a high likelihood that we might be able to establish some shooting areas in their communities as well.
Yeah, that should be mentioned too, that one of the criteria that we did, that the partnership has talked about is the proximity, how long it would take to drive from the urban Front Range area to the mountains and siting a location. So I think it was less than an hour that we thought was a reasonable time frame for people to drive. Commissioner Gardner?
Well, I would just add that, it's not, we're not saying we're not going to look at the plains. I think right now, our biggest area of conflict is the mountains, so that's where we've concentrated our efforts. But I've also gotten comments that, well, that's because that's the only place to go. If there were places to go in the plains, then we wouldn't have the conflict out there. So I think everything's on the table, and we'll just keep looking.
Thanks. Commissioner Donnelly?
Sure, absolutely. I think you had the really salient point, Gary, that maybe I would reemphasize is that you want the site to be convenient, and so really you want it to be as close in as possible without causing conflicts. So certainly we'll look at the plains, where we'll look at where the people live, and we'll look at the conduciveness of the site to be in a suitable location, and we'll take all those things into account. site of facility.
Great, thank you. Another really common question is about the criteria, which I have on the screen right now. A lot of folks commented on the desire to expand the distance from a home that a shooting, designated shooting area would be sited. Can you talk about, the criteria and how you're actually using it and looking at identifying the site? Who would like to address that? All right, Commissioner Watson.
Well, I'll let you know what our experience has been. What we have to remember is this was a starting place. This criteria was developed 3 years ago as a place to start. We've learned a lot since then. And personally, what I've seen is that the distance from a resident of a quarter mile is not enough. We hear from the folks. They come out and they're very vocal, and I sympathize with them because I don't want a shooting range a quarter mile away from my home. So I think that this is just a starting place, and it's not standing up to the test.
Yeah, I should also say that I did participate in a tour of the Estes Park Gun and Archery Club facility that's just down Big Thompson, and unfortunately got pretty damaged during the flood. But that enlightened us in that before we were looking at a 5 to 10 acre flat area to build a range, and when we saw that location, it was nestled in these really steep gullies and gulches and peaks, which it could have been a home a quarter mile away on the other ridge, and you would not have heard or seen the shooting facility. So that's something that I know Boulder County is starting to take into consideration to try to find some of the topographic opportunities that would buffer sound, make things more safe. So I know these numbers, as Commissioner Watson said, are preliminary. They were initial opportunity for us to go out and you can see in the mapping just to see what might be a potential opportunity. But as you've heard, each county has gone out and done numerous site visits to look at potential sites, and that's just the beginning. There will be site-specific land use review, environmental review for each one of these sites. Anyone else would like to talk about the preliminary criteria, especially related to the distance from a home, Commissioner Hayden?
Yeah, I think Gail really pointed to something good. This is just put some sideboards on the question of how close can a shooting range, a developed shooting area, be. Remember that there is going to be a public process, an opportunity for everybody to weigh in. When a site, at least in Clear Creek County, and I can speak for the whole partnership, is ever evaluated or considered, one of the first things that we're going to do is conduct decibel tests. We're going to actually go out there and see whether or not you can hear gunfire, and if so, how loud it is scientifically. So not just a matter of standing out there saying I can't hear that. So it's a very sensitive subject matter. I've got residents in my county that I guarantee you 1 mile is not enough, and nor is 5 miles. So whether you can hear the sound or not, this is the rub, folks. It is.
I mean, I would just add that it, as Gail said, it's preliminary, and I think we really learned when we were having our open houses that we heard from a lot of different people, both from shooters and from residents and recreationalists, that the distance is probably not these distances are probably too small, and that also that the topography plays a much bigger part in that siting than distance alone, and that we had to, as Tom said, start someplace, because looking at, in our case, the whole county in one big swath, I mean, you can't figure it out. You can't find any place. And so, again, that's why I guess we can't reiterate enough, at least I can't, that, feet on the ground, eyes on the ground, if you know that your neighbor has the best place and he's always wanted to sell it, well, call up Gary.
Oh yeah, let me put my contact information right on the slide there. There you go. Thanks. So we just had another question from someone on Facebook. How will the future open houses or meetings be publicized? And how was this meeting publicized? So let me take a stab at that. So this meeting has been publicized for over a month. We've done probably 3 different press releases sent from each of the partner agency. We've done a lot of social media on this. We've distributed some flyers in sports stores, gun shops. We have our email list that's now about over 340 people are signed up, and that's, I would say, that's the best way to stay apprised of the upcoming meetings. We've sent press releases to shooting enthusiast groups, and produced some videos that we also sent out a number of times, 3 different videos that give background of the project. So we will continue to use those mediums. If there's other media that people feel would be helpful, we're happy to engage with that as well. So please feel free to contact me about that. And that kind of relates to the next question. How much input will the public have during this upcoming process, both in the county process and the Forest Service process? Why don't you, Glenn?
I can start, sir.
Forest Service, why don't you?
We continue to provide opportunities for input at all phases or all stages of any kind of analysis that we do. Clearly, it's an open and transparent process, so input is what we're seeking, and if there is input that's going to address some significant issues associated with what we're proposing, we want to know about it. We'll track it. We'll ensure that those things get tracked through the entire process, and we look for many milestones for us to engage the public, from the initial proposal to alternative development. Are we sure we got the issues straight or right, and are they valid with you? What kind of effects analysis? At all stages of the analysis, we will ensure that the public has ample opportunity to play a role.
And counties, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Hayden.
I can tell you that, we are elected by our citizens and our constituents, and any land use decision or any activity to allow or not allow a use in the county that we're involved with will most certainly be advertised and go through a full public review process.
Thank you. Anything else for the county's same similar?
It's similar. I don't have my land use calendar in front of me, but it's a multi-step process that takes place over weeks and months, and where it's fully advertised, and many opportunities for the public to engage in that.
Great, thanks. So again, I want to just emphasize we have about 15 minutes left in the virtual meeting. If you'd like to send a question or comment, we'd be happy to pose that to the partners. A couple more questions then. This one, obviously, significant number of comments and concern about this. So is the partnership considering noise of its impact to surrounding residents when citing designated shooting areas? Commissioner Hayden?
Absolutely. I spoke to that earlier, that on the evaluation of any site, we're going to perform sound tests, actual decibel tests. I mean, aside from the safety issue, which I think is number one, is the believe me, I know how our phones ring really well when the weather warms up and the people come out of the Denver Front Range area, because they're fairly quiet during the winter. But it's so frustrating for a lot of our residents that live in these problematic areas that we're trying to find this balance to enjoy their peace and quiet, when indeed that's the difficulty of the situation. It's the sound.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because there are numerous comments about people saying that their quality of life is being impacted by shooting. And what do you say to that? do you imagine that these strategies will eliminate the sound of gunshots in forest lands, in the public lands? And then number two, how, do you think the strategy will reduce that in some areas and focus it in other areas? So what are your thoughts about that? Because I think there's a desire by some people that would like to eliminate that sound of guns in all public lands. Is that what you're shooting for? I'm sorry for the pun. Is that what you're aiming for? Go ahead, Glenn. Would you like to take that one?
I can speak to that. One of the first thing is that one of the overarching purposes for the partnership and the development of the strategies is to provide safe places for people to shoot. We recognize that we can mitigate to varying degrees the sound by baffling and putting in safety features. Clearly, you cannot eliminate the noise altogether, but we feel like in certain areas that you can actually mitigate that noise through baffling and providing berms and safety features. So they have to be done in conjunction. Will there be certain areas that perhaps you will not hear noise associated with guns? I think so in the future, but clearly it's not. I just don't think that will be eliminated.
Okay. Commissioner Gardner?
Well, yeah, I don't think that hope is realistic, but I think that our intention is, number one, obviously, is the safety factor, and then two, I think the thing that we have to acknowledge is that the reason we're here today is because the population increase particularly over the last 5 years, of people coming, both living in the mountains, recreating in the mountains, living in the mountains, shooting in the mountains, skiing, playing loud music, having a wedding venue. All of those areas of conflict have increased over the last few years, just from a population standpoint, and opportunities for recreating people are out there doing it more. And so trying to balance all that is what we're trying to do. And I think, as Glenn said, we will, any site that we decide, we'll take all the noise will be a criterion, and two, we will do everything possible we can to mitigate that. And but at the end of the day, it won't be realistic to say that shooting will not be heard in any of these landscapes.
Okay.
If I could add one thing that we've observed is that shooting is done in conjunction with other recreational activities that are occurring on the forest. It's clearly there's folks are out dispersed camping. Shooting may be something that they do in conjunction with that. If they're out using their ATV or whatever, there just seems to be, it's one of many things that people are going to the public lands for. In combination rather than as a single entity or a single opportunity.
Great. All right. Here's another question. Who will be responsible for the proper design of these shooting areas, ensuring that they are safe for the environment, wildlife, recreationists in the area, and nearby residents? Any thoughts about how to bring in expertise? Steve Yamashita with Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
I think the entity who is going to be responsible, whether it's a county or the Forest Service or CPW, if it's on their land, they're going to be responsible ultimately for the design of that. There are standards out there that exist now, and I think most of the ranges that we put in place are utilizing NRA's standard designs that have been around for time immemorial. So I think it's not like we're trying to reinvent the wheel. The design standards are already out there.
Great. Thank you. So I have a last question here, actually. In terms of the shooting ranges, and maybe Glenn, the Forest Service, you could talk a little bit about this with your experience with Baker Draw. Will there be any restrictions for use of these shooting areas? For example, use of only certain permitted guns only, minimum age requirement, types of targets utilized, no use of explosive targets, and limited hours of use.
Gary, you just were reading off all of the sideboards or prohibitions associated with Baker Draw, but I just happen to have them here, so I'll read them off. No clay pigeons allowed. There is no opportunity for using clay pigeons. Rifles and handguns only. Alcohol is not permitted. Firearms shall only be discharged from designated shooting stations. No tracer rounds or incendiary rounds allowed. Shoot only at authorized targets, and that is limited to paper, cardboard, metal, metallic targets. Wood backing is not allowed. Ensure weapons are unloaded or holstered when moving them between vehicles in the firing line. Ear and eye protection must be worn. No automatic fire or simulated automatic fire like bump firing. Remove all shell casings. Area around the site is closed to shooting to enhance safety. So those are things that we ensure are happening at Baker Draw, and it's open from sun up to sundown. So there is no activity at night.
Again, no use of explosive targets.
No use of explosive targets. That is prohibited on all National Forest System land.
Yeah. And I guess there is maybe another question I've had because it came up today. Commissioner Hayden forwarded that information to me about a fire that was determined to be caused by a shooting in Park County. Is that right? Was it Park County? Yeah.
It was Park County.
Yeah. So that does come up as a very often cited concern that shooting does lead to potential forest fires, and as we know, we're very susceptible to that. It's very sensitive to that in the mountains. What are your thoughts about your strategy and how that might affect the increase of that, decrease of that? Any thoughts? Yeah, Commissioner Hayden.
The development of a designated shooting area is going to decrease that possibility. Number one, I'm sure there are fire extinguishers at all shooting ranges, shooting sites, areas. Most shooting areas are not vegetated. Most shooting areas that I'm aware of that we hope to design control the projectile into a safe background, a safe bank. So I don't see that as being I would be concerned if we did not develop any.
And are there any new regulations or laws being proposed by the partnership or by any of the entities individually?
No. Well, the purpose of this partnership is not to enforce laws or make laws. The purpose of this partnership has been very well expressly, clearly stated here tonight. We are a cross-jurisdictional land use management group, and we are not here to make laws or enforce laws.
Great. Well, that's all the questions that I have, and I'm really pleased that we got through all of them. So if there's anything that you all would want to say in closing before we sign off tonight, if there's anything you want to reiterate or hasn't been said, I'm going to give you an opportunity.
Gary, this is Steve.
Yeah.
I just encourage anybody who's listening online or participating in any way to contact somebody, whether it be Gary or one of the county commissioners or CPW or the Forest Service. Stay involved. We rely on your input, and if we don't get that input, it's just us making the decisions, and we really do value what you think.
Mr. Hayden?
That's a very good point. We do value the input, and that's what's guiding this whole process. This group up here, everybody needs to know this partnership. We are here to resolve a conflict, to make the world a better place, and to make it a safer place. We are not here to listen to the same phone calls over and over again. Why can't you do something about this shooting that's upsetting my peace and quiet? Or destroying the forest or making a trash site. So, there is a solution, and this group is definitely on. I'm so encouraged with the progress we've made.
Thank you. So, If there's nothing else anyone wants to say, then I will ask Mike to put on the next step slide. And if your specific question did not get answered to the way you felt like it should be answered, I urge you to contact me, and there's my phone number, my email address. I'd be happy to provide some more information. I also want to let you know that over 270 comments and questions were received to date. We have put all those on the website. If you go to the virtual website drop-down menu, they're all there in a PDF file. We've also, this video that we've done today will be archived and available in a few days, and we'll put out an email letting people know when that's available so you can share it with friends and neighbors, club members, whoever that maybe couldn't view this tonight. I also want to just, again, urge people to go to the website and sign up for email updates. We have over 340 people signed up right now, but that is the best way for you to stay apprised of the activities of the partnership in each county. And if you have a specific question about what's transpiring in a particular county, go to the website, project information page, and it'll have a link to the county staff person who you can contact to find county staff specific information as well. So I want to, on behalf of the partners, thank you all for being here tonight, and I want to thank the members of the viewing audience who participated, and we'd love to hear your feedback about how this format was carried on and how you received it, because it was an experiment and we thought it was worth trying to engage as many people as possible and make it as accessible as possible. So thank you very much and have a good night.